The Thing is a 1982 sci-fi horror movie directed by John Carpenter, the one and only. Have not actually seen a ton of his movies, four I believe. The Thing is my favorite of them. This is my third watch, I think. I always fluctuate a little bit on what I think of it. This is kind of a watch that gave me a little bit of a lower end view of it. Still great, but there were some things that stuck out to me a little bit about effectiveness of certain scenes that I want to talk about later. But before we get to some possible negatives, I do want to hit on some pretty clear, pretty strong positives the film has. Obviously, the practical effects are awesome, very convincing, even today. The advantage, I think, of this style of effect is that it's not necessarily trying to convince you it's real. There is a certain over the topness, almost cartoonishness in a sense that you can get away with, and this to the film's benefit, I think. The sort of aesthetic with its gore, with its alien creature. We've also got the visual variety the film provides that encompasses both color and style of camera movement and style of shots. And then also, I think the score is utilized really well. His score is great in its minimalism, in the times it's utilized. This movie would not be better with a bigger score. The subtlety of the score in so many scenes makes the movie better, helps you focus on the mystery as an audience. So I'm not going to touch too much on the practical effects because I think the benefits are mostly pretty clear. The one thing I do appreciate is how nice the movement comes across, I think. There are a lot of reverse shots. There are a lot of, tentacles and little appendages getting pulled around remotely. And I think it all works pretty well. Mostly because it's not trying to pull off very human movements, I think, given the fact that the creature is alien. It doesn't necessarily have to be as convincing as something we would recognize. So when we get things with the tentacles whipping around, and we get, the head slowly pulling apart from the body, and the spider crab head crawling around on the floor, there's a certain quality that, even if the movement is a little bit wonky with the crab a little bit, like the way it walks is a little weird, that's fine. That's actually good. If the movement is bizarre, then that's to its benefit. If all the movement has to do is whip around tentacles, totally fine. What it has to do is convincing. Something that stuck out to me a lot, though, is the style of camera, I think, in the film. This is especially seen in, I think, the roller skates. The roller skates, I think, are a really nice, efficient filmmaking idea. I say efficient because, it's not just an excuse for a variety in camera movement. Like when we're following Knowles, I believe is his name, down the hallway the first time we see him. The camera's moving fast to keep up with him. So it's a little bit of a break from the more static shots surrounding that. But also, even besides that, it's a nice little character thing to give him some kind of uniqueness to add to his charm as an individual person in the film. So it's got a little bit of efficiency there, gives the camera an excuse to do something different. We also have a couple of more fast shots later. I believe it's when McCready is running down the hallway to confront Blair as he's smashing everything up. Camera's moving fast to keep up with him down the hallway. A couple of speed variety shots, always nice to mix up the feel of a scene. Especially in this case, where so much of the film is focused on stillness, focused on kind of like these creeping point of view sorts of shots. And those slower shots, focusing on hallways, focusing on empty spaces, focused on stillness, sometimes focused on the dog moving very slowly, checking things out. You need certain mix-ups in your movie. You can't have everything the same. Unless you're like Jean Dielman. If it fits the movie's purpose, that's great. But this movie isn't one note. It benefits from some variety. I also like the stillness of the shot where we see Blair just looking at the computer program. I remember thinking before on like a previous watch that I wasn't a fan of that scene, thinking, the like that doesn't really tell us anything new about the alien's behavior. But I mean, it does actually. The fact that it's emphasizing Blair's realization that someone's probably infected. He's going to have to take steps to make sure this thing doesn't leave. So even if like the little assimilation part of the program is kind of whatever, tells us things we already need to know, it's the fact that this scene, it's just the quiet realization of Blair, the audience quietly realizing how dire the situation is getting. There's a certain gravity to it, and the stillness helps a lot with that. And just in general, the camera has a good feel for how long to hold on a given moment. I'm thinking especially of, the blood testing scene. Some of those tests are a little bit dragged out, and it's good because you need to make the audience feel that tension, fear what's coming up next. I love the long looks around hallways, just kind of giving the impression, you could say either that it's like the thing looking around for a next victim, or like it's an innocent person kind of carefully looking around corners trying to see if there's something there to get them. But, either way you look at it, I think focusing on the stillness just makes you wonder, like, what's around the corner, which, of course, is to the movie's benefit for establishing suspense. And then, of course, we also have some really nice colors. I watched the 4K transfer of it, which looks so good. Makes the colors pop a lot. In terms of utility, I just think it paints the outdoors as like an alien world. The Antarctic is a hostile, mysterious place. It's dangerous in terms of them not being able to escape into it. And, the blue of the outdoor lights, the pink of the flares, just give it like a painting feel, like paints it like a mysterious location that it is. We don't have so much color inside. We get some blue highlights occasionally and whatnot, but I mean, the inside is simple enough in decoration and in color, and that's fine. It is what it needs to be. But the colors outside, especially, provide some great highlights. Again, for visual variety. If the entire movie was just a okay indoor set, that would look a little bland. But it's not. We have the colors outside. We also have the underground set at the end. That gives some nice visual variety in locations. I also think there's just a smidge of humor in just the right spots. You can't go too heavy with the humor in this case because, the suspense is kind of the main character. So you can't be undermining the suspense too much. The times they choose to inject it are really great. The first thing that comes to mind is the scene with the head crab kind of crawling off the body. And, one of the characters says, like, are you kidding me? And that's great because it emphasizes a characteristic of the thing, that it's not easily killed, emphasizes what the characters are up against. But it's also, it's kind of the same thing the audience is thinking in a sense, like just the shock, the unbelievability. It's kind of framing that same unbeatable nature of the thing in a slightly humorous way. And it's just a great touch. And then the other one, of course, is when people are being untied from the couch after a successful test. That's coupled with, angry outbursts, just emphasizing the stress that the characters are under. The head guy, like the sheriff or whatever, former head guy, last guy to get let out. Of course, you want to be free to be able to fight off the thing if he comes for you. So it makes a lot of sense to have a humorously over the top reaction in that moment because, in addition to that, we do get a sort of relief after that testing scene. Like, we know these people are safe. So in that moment, the suspense kind of lets up for a second, and that's the right time to hit the humor button because you're not killing an existing mood. The suspense is lifted. Throw in a quick joke for variety. Let the audience feel a little bit of relief before you get back into it. Then, of course, we also have the score. Very nice score. It fits the tone of the movie so well. There's constant mystery, little synths with some strings and stuff like that. Never anything too big, never pushing the mood, just kind of accentuating what's already there. And I think that's especially effective in the opening scene. It could be easy to just start off the movie with a big eye-catching scene with big bombastic score as we're getting like a weird chase between a dog and a helicopter. But I mean, the movie knows what it's about. It's not about the grandness of the scenery. It's not about the epic spectacle. of the thing. It's about the mystery, it's about the paranoia. And by having a simpler score, a score that fits tension better, the movie is emphasizing that for the audience. The audience is looking at this scene and thinking, okay, why is this helicopter chasing this dog? Why are they shooting at this dog? That doesn't make any sense. The score is also implying tension, implying there is something wrong with the picture. The audience is not crazy. So those two are working together so well in the opening scene to establish the movie's theme. And then also, I think it's pretty interesting later in some scenes like the dog transformation, there's next to no score. There's a droning synth for maybe like the first half, first 2/3 of the scene. During the scene where Norris transforms, no score. And again, I think this is just about letting what the movie is shine. Because if you push these moments with score, it takes away from the shock that the characters are experiencing. It takes away from the shock that the viewer is experiencing, seeing these kind of wild events if they're pushed by score. But they're just lying there. The spectacle is good enough to carry those scenes, and the movie knows it. And it's to its benefit because, if you can just let the audience sit in that same emotion the characters on screen are experiencing, and it works, like that's a great achievement. That's a sign that the practical effects are great because they alone are enough to carry the audience and keep them in the moment. So, sometimes that minimalism is the sign of great filmmaking. And in this case, it's a sign that the movie did everything it needed to correctly. This is more of like a personal take, an opinion I had earlier when I was watching the movie, like maybe my first or second watch. I was kind of thinking, a potential weakness of the movie is that it doesn't really develop the characters while they are distinct people. There's no specific development of the characters, I would say. They're kind of established, and then they kind of run amok. To counter my own no longer held opinion, I guess, I'll say this. I think that's not necessary. I think what the people are experiencing is simple and human enough that they don't need further development for us to be on board with them. They're immediately put in an impossible situation against an impossible to defeat, well, not impossible, but extremely difficult to defeat foe. And I think they're just instantly empathetic because of the stakes they're up against and the simplicity of the situation. Paranoia is just such a simple human emotion that we don't need a justification to be on board with them in that moment. I think I said earlier, paranoia is the main character, and it is. That's the focus. The fact that everyone is congregating kind of like around that emotion is good enough. So yeah, there are a few scenes I'm not the biggest fan of. One is the blood testing scene, actually. The sequence, of course, where I don't remember everyone's name. I'm so bad with names. The other pilot guy, smoking a joint guy. When his blood is tested, he transforms. Something about the way that scene is cut together, I think, just feels a little bit disjointed. I'm willing to let the flamethrower malfunction go. Like, it's kind of annoying, but it's a movie. It happens. It's a convenient way to manufacture some extra suspense. Whatever. But something about the combination of that with the way people react, not that their reactions are unconvincing, and the sometimes drastic changes in visuals of the transformation. I think they just come across a little disjointed. I don't think they cut together all that well. I think the final boss, so to speak, the big old guy with the tentacles underground, I just think it's an underwhelming kind of confrontation near the end of the movie. Something about the way he's just kind of standing there. And I get it. They've got limitations with how much they can move these things, probably. I mean, they're not CG. They can't make it do whatever they want it to. But something about the fact that it's just kind of standing there. The tentacles are no longer an impact on the scene. MacReady can just kind of throw the dynamite stick at it and run away, and he's good. I think it just strikes me as a little bit underwhelming for the climax, basically. Then the ending scene, I'm not sure I think this is a bad thing, but part of me wonders if it's a little counterproductive to some information established earlier in the movie. Because we had some discussion among characters about how if the thing just freezes out, then it can just come back whenever the rescue party comes back and unthaws things. I guess there's no guarantee that it would unthaw dead bodies, bring them back. But I would assume, if the rescue party comes and finds a bunch of dead people, they're going to bring back the bodies to the families or whatever. But either way, there was some talk about the thing kind of winning by freezing out. And it just feels a little bit wrong to me that the characters are just okay with sitting there facing each other when they know if the thing freezes, it at least has a much better chance to win rather than if it was burned to death. So I just don't think it comes across well that the characters are content to just sit there and freeze to death. I really think the movie would be better served ending with the two still trying to hunt each other down to really exterminate the threat of the thing, because they've seen how powerful it is and how devastating it is. So I'm just not really satisfied with how the movie ends at that spot. But I mean, all that said, it's still a great watch. Really love the movie. Love the look of it, especially now that I've got the 4K. I kind of just want to watch it again on my own TV because it's a little bigger than the one I watched it on. Great watch, endlessly rewatchable. It's just so fun. It's just so easily appreciable. We'll definitely be rewatching this again in the future, maybe even annually. It's just that kind of movie. Big fan.